We have Justin Snyder with us today, and Justin bootstrapped Forest Superfoods with $100 in his bank account. I think that's Australian dollars, so that's like $20 in actual money. And to date, he's done over $40 million with zero outside finance. We're going to figure out how he did that. And he still owns 100% equity, which is even more weird. Now, this is in the medicinal mushroom and superfood space in Australia. So we'll be talking a little bit about superfoods. We're going to be talking about branding. We're going to be talking a little about how he has built this business from the ground up. So Justin, welcome.
Thanks, Nick.
Now, let me ask you first, for those who are not clear, what is a superfood? If you could give us a quick review of the term.
So well, if you would have asked the media 10 years ago, they would say superfoods all hype and you can just eat blueberries. But I think that conversation has kind of shifted and now it's become a very mainstream thing. But to me, superfoods are nutrient-dense foods, usually containing active compounds and nutrients and flavonoids and beta-carotenes, things like that we don't get in our regular diet. So something lion's mane mushroom has got 280 active compounds in it, and virtually none of them are available in the day-to-day foods we eat. They're only available in the lion's mane mushroom. And there's been studies, the University of Queensland did one last year, where the studies showed that the lion's mane mushroom can actually help to repair damaged nerves in the brain, and they can help improve your memory. And they're now looking at using it for Alzheimer's prevention and all kinds of things like that. So it's a food that's particularly nutrient dense. So I would include blueberries and oats and things like that as superfoods as well. But the stuff we sell is more of the exotic stuff that wasn't available in Western countries 10 years ago or so. It can really help people to improve their lives and their well-beings in all different ways. There's something, ashwagandha root, which has been used in Ayurvedic medicine for thousands of years, that naturally lowers your cortisol levels. So when you're feeling stressed or anxious, have a little bit of ashwagandha and it helps to make you feel less stressed and more calm and more relaxed, and can help you sleep, and testosterone and all kinds of stuff like that. And so I think up until very recently, everyone was just, I feel a bit down today, I'll just take some pills. And now everyone's moving away. I think as a society, we're empathetic, pharmaceutical based stuff in a lot of circumstances and looking for natural solutions. And I think that's why 80% of people in America and Australia take some kind of supplementation, because I think it's becoming a mainstream thing and everyone wants to improve their diet and their well-being. And a lot of the food we get for supermarket stuff doesn't have a lot of nutrition in it because it's been frozen for a couple of years and the soil's been tilled for 100 years and they've put all these poisons on it and all this kind of thing. And there's actually a study that came out in 1996 that actually found that one apple in the 1950s, to get that same amount of nutrients in 1996, you would have had to have 15 apples. And so a lot of the foods we're eating now are lacking in the nutrients and vitamins that we need. And so superfoods and supplementation can play a role in.
When we're talking about superfoods, I remember the nutraceuticals was a huge thing years ago.
Yeah.
And I was very surprised that kind of died out, because that whole need for sort of more natural, for being able to take sort of supplements in easy ways, like through drinks and through easy to swallow tablets like yours. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I definitely see that there's a need for it. Now, you've been, by the look of it, if I just take it from your YouTube page, which has nearly reached 1 million views, so I'm sure you're looking at that number quite carefully. Yeah. So 2013 is when that YouTube page started. So you've been an overnight success in just over 10 years, right?
Exactly. It's that Jack Dorsey quote that I tell everybody, that 10 years of hard work, perseverance, and failure will make you look like an overnight success. But yeah, I heard someone said the other day that to be an entrepreneur, you have to be somewhat psychotic. And I think that's kind of true. Like not that I'm going to kill small animals or anything like that, but I think you go through such a long period with no results or very little results, and everyone telling you, what are you doing? Go and get a job. It's not working. It's not going to work. All these failures, all these hurdles, and you keep persevering. That you kind of be kind of crazy to keep doing that.
Absolutely. There definitely is a bit of psychopathy, I think, is the word our friend, what's his name, Jordan Peterson would mention, because you've got to have this misguided view that you can actually make this work. And those are the people who do it.
Yeah.
I want you to talk to me about your first 10 customers, your first 100 customers, and your first 1,000 customers, and in terms of how that changed your business. And maybe let's start actually with your first customer.
So My first customer, I think I asked my mum to order some stuff and she said, bugger off, give it to me for free. But my first real customer, I think, was I was very fortunate that I had another business that I'd started in high school. So I had that to fall back on, and I'd had this idea for ages since traveling around India that I wanted to start the superfood business. It took me about 8 years to start, actually. I eventually started, and luckily, because it made no money for about 6 years, I had the Happy Cow business to provide me with an income so I could survive. But the first customers, it might have been someone ordering by accident because the website was horrible and barely worked. But I remember that those first couple of orders coming in, and you're so excited. And I even remember the time where I stopped getting email notifications for every order. Like, I remember that time when I went, it's just too much now. I can't get an email notification for every single order. And that was like, yeah, that's a massive
Suffering
milestone.
from success. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I didn't have time for all these orders. Yeah, the first couple of customers, people just went on the website and just ordered some stuff. And I'd go down to the local health. We had a health food store and bulk store close to where I lived that sold really high quality, certified organic superfoods, the basic ones we sold back then. And so I'd buy a couple of kilos from them, and then I'd have our bags and I would just divide it up and send out the order. And so that was the first couple of orders. And for the first 5 years at least, maybe longer, there just wasn't any money. There just wasn't. You'd get some sales, the money would come through from PayPal or Stripe, or whatever for those sales. You'd pay an invoice that's been overdue for a week. Then you'd make a few more sales, you pay another invoice, you get someone else to say, you tell someone else, give me an extra 2 weeks. You just be moving money around all the time just to be able to cover the bills and keep going. Yeah, I'm really grateful we're not like that anymore because that was really stressful. Just never having enough money for bills, and also not having money paid for to pay myself, not having enough money to take a wage for all the hard work I was doing. But I think I was very lucky that I've always been kind of against debt. I think that might have been something I got from my parents because my parents aren't very much into debt either or fancy things, and so I just never want to take out a loan against a business or get private equity involved, or the private equities are always knocking at the door, but I never wanted to take money from someone else and then have to answer to them because I'd heard all these stories about you take someone invests, they buy 10% of your company and you think, well, they're only in 10%, but now they've got a say in everything you do. And that makes a real difference to the decision making process. And I mean, I was talking to someone the other day and I was saying the freeze drying, for example, all of our mushrooms and our ashwagandha and our moringa, all of our best sellers, we freeze dry them, which is a very expensive process of drying, but it stops all the nutrient degradation that usually happens during the drying process. So all other drying processes like straight spray drying, sun drying, dehydrating, all those things, you lose nutrients during that drying process. But the freeze drying happens so quickly and at such a low temperature that it stops all the nutrients from being destroyed. And there's about 4 or 5 studies on the internet that you can read that actually show freeze drying is almost nutritionally equivalent to eating the foods fresh. So I really want to do freeze drying. So I want to make it as close to fresh as possible because I think fresh is the best. But it's super expensive. So someone else, private equity comes in, or a bank gives me some money, or someone else gets involved, and they go, well, why don't we just use spray drying? It'll reduce our drying costs by 90%. We'll make all this money. People won't know the difference. We just won't say anything on the website. People won't know the difference, and we'll make a huge amount more profit. And that becomes a difficult conversation. And all of a sudden, I can't just make the decision that I want to make. I've got to think about someone else as well. And I'm very selfish. I just want to do what I want to do. And then it goes with most supplements. I don't know what it's like in Scandinavia and stuff, but in America and Australia, they only need to put, so if they call the supplement moringa or creatine or whatever, it only needs to be 10% moringa or 10% creatine. The rest can be all fillers. 90% can be fillers legally, and they can put on the label creatine supplement. And I just thought that was crap. When I was starting this, before I got into the industry, I was just like, I don't like that I'm paying money for a product and only getting 10% of it. And so I've just always done 100% pure products. And obviously it costs the customer a little bit more, but the gamble I took was that people would see better value in a product that was 100% pure, and it seems like a lot of people do. And so I'd always thought that, and it's for people starting a business, it's very easy to get stuck in this idea of people want the cheapest price. Give people the cheapest price, be very price based. And I think that's a mistake because I think once you start competing on price, there's always someone who can eat for less than you can. And it's just a race to the bottom, end up not making any money. I think you have to find a way to differentiate yourself from your competitors that isn't based around the price, have a different, unique selling point that isn't price based. And for us, it was that we do the highest quality stuff possible. And I say to people, we have ads. We've ads, the same ads we're running 2 years. It says, yeah, we're more expensive than everyone else. That's the ad. But because we are more expensive, but it's 10% more expensive, but you get 10 times better value. And so there's plenty of people out. I'm sure there's heaps of people who go, no, I just want the cheap imported extract that's mostly alcohol and fillers. So there's people that want that and want to save $20 a month in order to get that much lower quality product. But there's a hell of a lot of people who'll pay an extra $20 a month to get an Australian grown, freeze dried product that isn't diluted in alcohol and doesn't have any fillers. And that's what's allowed us to kind of grow from that first 10 customers to 100 customers to 1,000 customers to close to 10,000 customers a month or whatever it is now. It's that kind of that having something, a unique selling point that people want. And when people are buying supplements and health foods, I'd always thought it doesn't really make sense to buy low quality health foods that are full of pollutants and heavy metals and chemicals and alcohol and whatever else. You're better off just go and buy some fruit and vegetables. It's kind of it doesn't make sense to buy a health food which then deteriorates your health. So I just always was focused on doing the best quality stuff we could do, and that's how we've grown to that point. But to answer your question, the first 10 customers we as the order come in, pack the order and send it out, and the next 100 customers we'd be able to buy direct from suppliers, and then by 1,000 customers we're working directly with farms and manufacturing, going direct to the source and negotiating for better prices with the suppliers that were doing it growing certified organically and doing things really well, doing high quality manufacturing. And so it kind of grew that way. But I think one of the things from the first day for me was about making sure that, like, as much as I possibly could, make sure every customer had an incredible experience. Because growing up, I grew up working my grandfather's jewelry store in Melbourne, and he always said to me, you can't give people a reason to go somewhere else. Because as soon as they have one reason to go somewhere else, they will. And with an online business, there's so many opportunities. Well, any business, I guess, but for an online business, if the website's buggy, if the checkout's too long, if the website's slow, if the order arrives wrong, if the order arrives damaged, if the order takes too long to arrive, if you send them too many emails, there's so many different things that you can do that give them a reason to go somewhere else. And so my whole focus from day one has been, don't give people a reason to go somewhere else. Give every customer, or as many customers as you possibly can, the most incredible experience from the moment they hear about your brand till the moment they place their 100th order. And that's always been so. Like, we've always sent things express. We always send things express, so it costs us a fortune. It costs us per order. It basically costs, the shipping costs us double what it would for regular post. We send everything express post because I think the human brain, we're so used to going into a shop and buying something and then taking the product, that when you buy something online and it takes 3 weeks to arrive, that's a shit experience. Because your brain's going, I don't even remember what I bought. I've always been thinking, and there's a really good book if people want to read called Unreasonable Hospitality, which is a really interesting book about a guy who starts running a rundown restaurant in New York, and it becomes the top restaurant in the world with 3 Michelin stars, 3 years in a row and all that stuff. And basically the whole book is just about how they blew the minds of every single customer. That's the whole book. It's looking at your customers and going, how can I wow these customers? Like, I want every customer. And the unfortunate thing about human psychology is that people are way more likely to leave a bad review than a good review. Like, if they have a good experience, they don't really do anything. But if they have a bad experience, they go and tell everybody. And so I think if the aim should be to wow everyone so much that they go and leave you a 5-star review on Google or Facebook, whatever. And we've got a 4.9-star rating on Google reviews. And as far as I know, every single one of our competitors hides all their Google reviews. I don't know why. You decide for yourself.
Yeah, and that's about with 5,000 reviews as well, if I read correctly.
Thousands. Yeah. I think
Thousands, yeah.
those are the reviews in our website, but the Google reviews kind of roll over every 90 days. But there've been thousands and thousands of them.
Now, some great points, obviously, and in order to run a business, well, not all businesses can do what you've done, exactly because of the constraints that you mentioned with other people owning part of the business or having a lot of chefs, and also focusing on very short-term wins. So we have to make budget this month. We have to make this kind of return for shareholders. And obviously it's more difficult to do it the way that you've done it, but probably more rewarding. And because you don't seem to have a very, and maybe you do, but a very strict sort of cash amount in mind that you want to get every month or every year, you are focusing more on customer experience and building this as a longer term business. So this also goes back to what you mentioned about starting out with repackaging other folks' products and then creating your own later, which are better quality. But let's talk about branding a little bit, because this ties into the exact story that you're talking about, and lesson that a lot of entrepreneurs can take as well. When you're starting out a business, your ideas and concepts might have to adapt over time. And your first logo and your first name, if I may say it aloud on the internet, was Cheap Superfoods.
Yeah.
And now it is not Cheap Superfoods, it is a Forest Superfoods. So talk to me about that moment when you decided, is it worth me changing the name? How am I going to change the name? Why Forest, etc.? So maybe talk to me about your mindset shift from going from Cheap Superfoods to your more quality, higher price option, which I completely agree with.
So, yeah, and I still remember the day everything shifted. But basically, before I started, this is going back 15 years ago. In Australia, there was two brands doing superfoods. There was no medicinal mushrooms. There were two brands doing superfoods online, and they were crazy expensive. So I thought, what I'll do is I'll come in and I'll do it at a much better price, and I'll get the masses. I'll get the mainstream market because it'll be more affordable for everyone. So I call it Cheap Superfoods. So I called it Cheap Superfoods and I put it online. And I started the business with a business partner who I bought out about 6 years in or 7 years in. But one day we were sitting opposite each other at our desks. I think it was maybe like 3 years in or something. I said to him, he said to me, no, I said to him, what do you think about the name Cheap Superfoods? And he said, I hate it. And he said, what do you think? And I said, I'm embarrassed to tell people what our business is called. Looking back, it was so illogical because we were already selling the highest quality stuff. We were already selling, everything was certified organic, everything was 100% pure, everything was no fillers, no alcohol extracts, cheap imports, no sugars, no flavors. It was just pure as possible, highest quality possible, but it was called Cheap Superfoods. It's so illogical. We over that night that we both realized how much we hated it. We changed it from Cheap Superfoods to Forest Superfoods because we were already donating, which we still do, but donating a portion of the revenue from every sale to protecting endangered rainforest. So, and a lot of the products come from the forest. The maca powder comes, and camu comes from the Amazon, and there's a whole lot of products there that come from the forest. So and forest and nature and whole foods, it all kind of fit together. And so overnight, we changed the logo, changed the website, changed all the branding. Everything changed from cheap to forest. And it was a massive turning point in the business. And it was a really good lesson for me as well about important to always be willing to adapt. To always be. And the CEO gets really annoyed with me because he's, oh, you're changing your mind again. And I'm, yeah, because I want to make the best decision. And I've got new information now, and the new information's come, and I've decided that we should pivot and go and do this instead.
Well, Justin, it's been a treat. And that's just to remind people to go to forestsuperfoods.com. For more information on superfoods and Forest Superfoods in particular, check out Justin's website, forestsuperfoods.com. Until next time, have a great day.